And good afternoon from Philadelphia. Frank here with yet another episode of UFO News Network Sunday on a Sunday. Nice change of pace. We're actually living up to the name of the show. We're all ready to go. We've got a fantastic guest, so let me bring in my co-host, Chant Hannah, to do the introductions. You do the honors, Chant. Who's our special guest for today?
Yeah, we have an incredible guest today. It is the iconic Chase Kloetzke. She's an experienced investigator and trainer with significant background in U.S. military and private sector and UFO research. While employed with the U.S. Department of Defense, Chase earned her Master Trainer, Master Instructor title, and accreditation for biomechanical engineering. While with the DoD, she designed specialized programs and supervised force readiness and elite force protection. She completed related assignments with Homeland Security and private sector security forces. Chase's certifications include private investigator, international forensic and evidence collections, and certified property and evidence specialist, CPES, through the International Association for Property and Evidence. As such, she consistently demonstrates the knowledge, technical requirements, legal parameters, and a commitment to evidence-based investigations using current technologies and methodologies deployed by professional law enforcement officials. Chase joined the Mutual UFO Network in 1996 and was later promoted to Star Team Manager and Deputy Director of Investigations, positions she held through 2011. In these roles, she was responsible for the program design, protocols, and investigation procedures for a national rapid response unit. This included supervising the most experienced investigators and having access to the most sensitive and complex cases reported to MUFON. In 2018, Chase became Director of Investigations and maintains a Field Investigator SAT status. In 2016, Chase became a registered and official lobbyist for the UFO field. Though her lobby, the Field Reports, a science and technology investigation group, through her lobby, she has focused on document declassification and serving as an intermediary for witnesses and those most affected by unknown technologies. Chase continues to work actively as a UFO investigator, responding to reports within the U.S. and abroad, with a special focus on Central and South America, Cuba, and Puerto Rico. She has brought hands-on forensic analysis to numerous ancient artifacts and allegedly anomalous samples such as the elongated skulls in the Star Child skull. She is committed to an ethical and professional evidence-based approach to the UFO phenomenon. There is no compromise when the truth is at stake. Chase, thank you for coming on to our show today.
It is so my pleasure. Chant, you have the most beautiful radio voice of a female I've ever heard.
Thank you. That was actually Frank talking.
Yeah, that was me.
We're just so thrilled to have you on the show today. Thank you for being here with us.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chase. I really appreciate it. And let's not beat around the bush. You've been involved in a little bit of controversy recently, and this obviously involves your involvement, long-term involvement with MUFON. And when recently you stepped down as Director of Investigations, and going back through your bio, you had been Deputy Director of Investigations and Star Team Manager through 2011. You started with MUFON in 96, and you had those two spots in 2011. Then, if I'm reading your bio correctly, you took a step back and then got re-involved and became, or at least your involvement became a little bit more heightened and became Director of Investigations in 2018. So tell us a little bit about why you stepped back in 2011 and then you stepped back up in 2018.
Yeah, I guess it can look quite confusing if you're, I don't guess, not me that knows all the details. There's a lot of titles in MUFON, which annoys everybody, including everyone in MUFON. So,
okay.
But the titles are important because they designate your job or position. And we all know that the most prominent and important title in MUFON absolutely the most prestigious is field investigator and state director. So I wanted to make that really clear because for 18 years at MUFON, that's what I was, a field investigator. And then I had a chance to become the STAR team manager by just filling out a one sheet of paper, sending it to the board of directors, like everyone else, explaining what I would do as a STAR team manager, what I bring to the table. And I was selected from that one piece of paper. And I love this story because
can I jump in here and ask
Sure.
for a little bit of clear up? Now, was this STAR team, was this together at that point, or was this sort of a new little organization within the little organization, or how did that all work? How did the spot become available?
Right. It was about a year after the Bigelow contract, which failed miserably. We all know that. And unfortunately, it was a really good idea with the wrong leadership in charge at that time. But for now, it was about a year later, and we knew we needed a national response group because it was such a great idea and program. So that was my job, was to put this all together, but now in a volunteer sense. Because when Bigelow had the contract with MUFON, they were paid. STAR team was paid, which is amazing. They weren't paid necessarily, but their ways and means and their logistics, travel, and all of that was reimbursed, which was amazing. I've never had that. That's so great, right?
Right.
So it was my job to bring back a national STAR team.
And that's basically to look into hot cases that really get the attention.
Any category 3, which is a case with physical evidence. So I got a call, and this is just a great story I just have to throw in because it meant so much to me. Chuck Reaver called to offer me the position. This was, back in 2009. And my husband answered the phone. He asked for Chase. I get on the phone, and he kind of stumbled for a moment, which I didn't think much of it. And he just apologized. He said, Chase, I'm sorry. I'm calling. This is Chuck Reaver of, board of directors of MUFON, and we're calling to offer you the STAR team manager position. But I'm a little dumbstruck because the one thing we didn't know is that you were female. And the name Chase, and I guess with my credentials, it never occurred to them I was a female. And he said, this is even better. And I love that because I got that job without any kind of gender identity. It was all on what I brought to the table. So it's one of my favorite stories I like to look back on. And I like to remind people sometimes when, they want to talk about, the treatment of women in MUFON. It's like, I don't know, guys. Maybe you expect too much. I don't know. But I love that story. I did take a little break after STAR team. That's very public. It's well known. And then I came back and I met Jan Harzan for the first time at a conference. And I was avoiding him like the plague, actually. And he invited me to lunch. And I, surprisingly, even to myself, said, sure, I'll go to lunch with you. And I remember following him down the escalator, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to like this man, and I am definitely not going to trust him. But how interesting, that I'm going to lunch with this guy I don't like. And about 15 minutes when lunch started, I forgot all about that. We became really great allies and colleagues, and have worked together ever since.
And then in 2018, you became a director of investigations. Now, is this the same spot that Chris Cogswell had and then turned around and dropped fairly quickly? Or was he director of scientific investigations? Or how did the spot become available in the first place in 2018?
Yeah, this director of investigation is MUFON's number 2. It's literally right under Jan Harzan. And the spot became available because the other DOI, or the last one, was Steve Hudgens. And not only was he being transferred to international, it's a tough job. I mean, he had done it for 6 years, and, it was just time to roll over and do something else for a while. So I I absolutely took the position. I accepted it, and I loved every second of it. I have wanted to be the DOI at MUFON since I started. Everyone knew that. I was so thrilled to have that position. And then there just came a point when I'm out there. I fly out to California and I'm meeting with Jan in the office, which was funny because some of these rumors about us not getting along dropped when I was in California at the office as we're working together, having a great time, by the way. And we're just looking at each other like, wait, what? Wait, what? But, it just, things start piling up. And the reason I stepped down as DOI 100% is this: how selfish it would be for me to continue in that position that really requires 40 to 60 hours a week, when almost monthly I have to ask everybody, state directors and everyone else, hey guys, keep that stuff on your plate. I have to go to Peru for 2 weeks. And then the next month, I'm going to be gone the entire month because I'm traveling with this project. And I promise you guys, it's July, August, and maybe parts of September. But I also have 2 huge conferences in September. And I realized, oh my gosh, I truly bit off more than I can chew. So what do you take off your plate? The only thing I could take off would be the fairness. And not to be selfish, I wanted that job, you guys. Oh my gosh. But it wasn't fair to everyone else who could put the hours in, who could give the state directors and the field investigators, the full-time attention they deserve. They deserve that attention. They haven't always gotten it in the past. So by me taking that position and just asking them to hang on because, I love you guys, right?
Right.
It was just selfish. And being able to step down as number 2 in MUFON to go back to exactly where I was a year ago. I'm still in SAT. I'm still like everything. The only thing that changed was I'm not the director of investigations anymore. Still very, very loyal to MUFON. I'm still in MUFON. I'm still kicking it. Jan and I get along fabulously. We just got back from a cruise together. Not me and him together. That sounded bad. My husband was there, his wife. It was a MUFON speaking cruise. It's
sort of a seminar at sea, basically.
It was awesome. We had the best time, not only on board, but, we were touring Mayan ruins, going through jungles, walking up these drastic steps, and, everybody kind of keeping an eye on each other. And it was just an amazing experience. But the truth is, giving up the DOI position, I still didn't have to give up MUFON. I didn't have to give up investigating for MUFON. I just had to step down to the most prestigious, or step down to the most prestigious title in MUFON, investigator.
Got it.
You can't forget that. Being number 2 in MUFON, was more, I don't know, it was awesome. It was a chance to maybe affect some changes, and we did. And if I could just monopolize another couple minutes.
Sure.
I really wanted to say that in that short time as DOI, a lot of things changed. And one of the things I loved was we needed to update the state director's handbook. And this is because there were other changes in MUFON going on and some policy changes. We had to put in a zero tolerance policy. So
for zero tolerance for what?
Any kind of discrimination against women, race, gender. I mean, all of it. It's a zero policy against any kind of discrimination or any type of actions that are inappropriate with regards to those topics. Complete zero tolerance. So, there have been things in the past, that have plagued MUFON unfairly, by the way, but they still have plagued us because you're a MUFON member when it's convenient and you do something wrong. When we're out there doing great things, you're not a MUFON member then, but that's just how it goes. But anyway, in the past, the state director's handbook was always done by the director of investigations and the executive director. So that would have been me and Jan. And I decided, wait a minute, the state director's handbook, why are we not asking the state directors what is most effective? They would be the experts on this topic. So instead of Jan and I doing it, I decided that this year or this time, I was going to invite the state directors. So I write down 4 of the names that were like some of our best state directors, but also our most interactive. They always have great ideas. They spot issues quickly, but they always come with sensible answers. And it turned out to be all women. So here's these 4 women and me for the first time in MUFON, an all-female team worked on it.
You want to give these ladies their due and name them, or?
Oh, absolutely. Dinah, down the state director in Florida, absolutely an amazing, hardworking, very fun, prominent and successful investigator and role model and state director in Florida. And then we had, oh my gosh, Cheryl in South Carolina, just a dominant force. She's tiny. She's a little dynamo, so smart. They really understand investigations and team building. And then we had Maureen Morgan in Washington, the state of Washington, just one of our newest and best talents. She's just amazing. She brings a lot of knowledge into her title and into that state. And then we have Stacy Wright from Phoenix MUFON, whom everyone knows. I hold them on a pedestal, but they deserve it. Phoenix MUFON, they're untouchable. They're golden.
Yeah, we had her on a little over a week ago. She's great.
Oh my gosh. Then she's just amazing. And she and Jim Mann run the state. She's actually an assistant state director. We forget that sometimes because Jim and Stacy are the dynamic duo of MUFON. And but just the most capable, smart women. And we broke that ceiling for the first time. A major project, the document that will basically run the ethics and rules and procedures of state directors, was done by women. Oh my gosh! Some men did get a little riled. There was a comment about, well, maybe a guy should. And I knew they couldn't stand it. It was almost like, well, don't you think a guy should maybe see if the girls are okay? But it was awesome. And I know that Jan not only is going to continue to support that he's not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. He loves that, by the way, and keeping it the same.
Got it. Now, there has been some controversy involving you within the last 8 weeks or so, and likely your stepping down is going to raise some conversation as to whether or not this played a role in your decision to step down, and that is the infamous Leach letter. It came out. Obviously, he's not one of your big fans, Chase. I don't think there's too much debate about that. But did that have any role? Did that add to any frustration that you might have had in continuing all these different efforts and deciding to excise the director of investigation spot at MUFON?
Absolutely not. I can tell you that his letter affected MUFON, not even a little bit, by the way. We had our largest membership month last month in over 2 years. We had no mass exit. People weren't quitting out of horror. Right. Kind of felt sorry for him because, he writes also about 14 people in MUFON supported him. And I had knots in my stomach when I read that because I felt so sorry for him because I thought there are thousands of people in MUFON. I had hundreds of letters. You had 14? Wow. Yikes. And you think that's okay and good. Okay. I really feel bad for this guy. Not to mention that it's really hard to have your feelings hurt or to feel at all targeted when most of it was lies, misinformation, and absolute fabrication. Oh my gosh, I do not run the SAT team who has a secret lab in John Bentry's basement in Pennsylvania. And the fact that there's just one after another accusation that he wrote in that letter that everyone now knows is untrue. Thousands of people in MUFON knew it wasn't true the minute they read it. It's like, well, how many untruths does he get to say before people kind of write him off as, ooh, don't know what your deal is, but whatever that childhood trauma is, doesn't belong to Chase Kloetzke. And that's exactly what happened. My friends are fine. Most people knew exactly what it was, and they were correct. But when there was so much wrong in it and so many false accusations that people knew immediately, what are you going to do with that? It's like Erica Lukes, who just recently put out a post as soon as she heard that I stepped down. Chase is removed for misconduct. These people don't fact check. These people aren't going to the sources. These people aren't telling the truth. They have no verification. They're not reporters. They don't even have ethics. Where's the integrity when you call yourself an investigator and put out so much crap and expect people to believe you every week? I don't understand this. And yet it kind of goes over their head when their phone isn't ringing. First of all, it's me, but it's many, many other people, because I'm still getting invited to conferences. I'm speaking at Congress this year. I'm speaking at, Gen 6. And this isn't bragging. I'm so fortunate. And I work so hard. I put in that money. I put in that time. I seek out certifications and, validation for skill sets, to make our field more legit. I teach, anyone who wants to know, I help, I mentor. It's ridiculous. But I think people are seeing these things. There's an audience for it. There's a very, very small audience for the Jerry Springer antics of, UFO radio. But for the most part, I don't see them going anywhere anymore. I just don't. And there's a lot of talk that they may not be aware of in support of everyone else. I guess it's really hard to put into words. What do you do with people that you can't reason with? They're not looking for the truth. They're just hurting people. They don't want to know the truth. If they did, then Erica Luke owes me an apology and MUFON for lying and putting out fake information that I was dismissed over misconduct. It's ridiculous. Chant and I laugh on the phone over this. It's bizarre. And yet, when they're caught, or it's very clear that the last 10 things they've said is untrue, they don't apologize. They don't make it right. They double down on why they have to do it, or they just move on to the next victim. And you do feel victimized after a while when you're, kind of ganged up on. We have to remember that Erica Lukes was definitely involved with Philip Leach, and Phil Leach and Erica were involved with, the guys, the UFO guys from Virginia. Oh boy, the Ben Moss and his partner, Tony, I don't even remember his last name.
I know his name.
Yeah, and then you have, Norm Gagnon. And they find an article that was proven fake 10 years ago, which is why it's no longer available and easy to find, that proof that Chase Kloetzke lied about the cornfield incident. There's no proof in there. There's no lie in there. It was clickbait by the same author that 2 weeks later posted Chase Kloetzke quits MUFON to join the Church of Mabus. 2 weeks later, he authors an article called Fingering Flipper. Yeah, let's take the credibility.
Yeah, you're talking about Jeffrey Pritchett.
Absolutely. So let's take the credentials of that person and then sneak it. I have to tell you guys, they emailed behind backs, like all the little friends around me and conferences about, look what we have on Chase Kloetzke. They didn't email me. My husband and I look at each other and he's like, are these grown men? We're horrified. It's like, take a Midol, boys. Serious.
So you're talking about Moss and Angiola now doing all this.
Absolutely. And who are they contacting the whole time as she sits back like Erica friggin' Lukes? It's
just to jump in really quick, I was on Erica's show last summer and debated Moss about the Socorro case, and I invite it's still up. I invite everybody to give it a listen. That's all I have to say. Moss never does. Moss never invites people to listen to me debate him. I'm more than happy to have people listen to that show. I know a little bit about that Socorro case and know a little bit about Moss and his integrity in terms of presenting the true facts of that case.
So. And what we're finding is that birds of a feather flock together. So as Tony and his partner Ben and this Norm Gagnon, all band together and they're sending out these emails like, "Ooh, look what we have on Chase," and they put it out on this new website they have. I have to admit, I'm a little horrified, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. And again, the investigators, the guys with the integrity, do not source check. They do not vet their information. They don't fact check anything. And so what am I left to do with that?
In Moss's case, they just make stuff up, which is what he does. To be honest.
Correct. So what do? Well, I take that screenshot of the website and I take their email that they were passing around behind backs and, really slimy maneuvers. And I've emailed it to all my contacts and my friends in production companies and History Channel and A&E and, look what these guys are doing. So, I didn't have to counter anything. I just helped them along. You want this out? Well, let's make sure everyone gets it, including the people you didn't want to see it, because they were smart enough not to send it to Richard Dolan or Linda Moulton Howe or a Race Hobbs, or a Chant or a Frank, somebody with integrity out here. And really my last complaint with this whole little gang of character slayers, what do we call them? I don't even know. Is what are they doing for the field? Absolutely nothing. Chase Kloetzke stepping down as DOI was an internal matter in MUFON. My friends all know why I'm stepping down. And it wasn't even, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not leaving MUFON. I was just so shocked this became such a big deal. But for me, it's in the end, what do these people, what are their motives? It's absolutely diabolical. It's character assassination, and they get away with it because no one stands up to them. No one does. You can't argue with people that don't care about the truth. You can't argue with people that don't want to do the right thing. You can imagine if I called her and talked to her about this, her meaning Erica Lukes or a Ben Moss, these guys, they don't even know how to handle something like that. So you know what you do? You take it to a lawyer. You go through the legal system, because what they're doing is not only wrong, but there's a huge backlash in this country right now about publicly calling yourself news or media or some sort of avenue of information and lying. If you can't prove what you just said, guess what? You're in big trouble.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm going. I'm not getting into the he said, she said with any of these people. And I know that they're going to rile up, and I'll be on her show next week about Chase Kloetzke again. Chase Kloetzke said that we had no integrity because we get caught in lies. And yet they do. So, it's just a legal matters. Where do you go from here?
Right. I'd also
I'll tell you what. Let's. I know where to go from here, because you dropped a few names in there while you were just going on about all this that have a connection to KGRA, and I think that's where a lot of people first became aware of you and all your work. And I'm still a fan of what they do over there. I was a fan pretty much from the day they started. I know I first started talking a little bit to Race. This is way back in the day. He probably wouldn't even remember this. but this was going back to the days of Jamie Havocan's little radio network. And I think Race, not too long after that, decided to hang out his own shingle. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Race Hobbs and KGRA, because I'm a fan of what they do over there.
Me too. Oh my gosh, it's so nice that you asked that and recognize that I had such a history with them. At first, and I don't mean to insult anyone out here, but no, Race is the king of radio and radio production. He has the smoothest voice ever. I love him. He's my baby brother. Everyone knows that we've kind of adopted each other. We can throw down every once in a while, but you know, in the end, we're always family. Yeah, I love KGRA. I think they're killing it. They're still killing it. They're top of their game. There's some other big things coming in the future. They're not done growing and expanding. And this all started with a couple of guys who were just disgusted again with how they were being treated and decided to stand up and move on without them. And in a lot of ways, that's exactly what we're doing out here. Is I'm not touching any of this with the Ben Mosses and his partner Tony and Norm Gagnon, the Erica and the Phil. They could go crazy for another month. I'm not listening. I'm not giving you any time. I'm going to Peru. I'm going to be there for 2 weeks. I'm working. I'm doing things out in the field. So knock yourselves out. And it's kind of what Race did with KGRA. He grew, and like everything else, you have different positions and different people around you. But there's always been a core group there, and that's his family. That's his tribe. And that includes his big sister. And I love KGRA. I love these guys. And you're right. They've offered me such an immense amount of opportunity to be the voice of Fate Magazine Radio. Oh my gosh. Or that little nothing girl with those, silly little radio show called Project White Paper that I knew nothing of what I was doing at all. It was crazy.
You learn as you go.
I moved on to Fate Magazine, and and then again, I have a problem, Frank and Chant. I want to do everything. So if things come up, I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. That sounds awesome. And sure, I'll do that. And I find my calendar actually being double booked sometimes. It's such a mess. It's crazy. But I want to keep rolling until I can't anymore. And last year I had a health scare. I'm still dealing with it. And, it was prominent. It was, it's serious. But I'm not slowing down. I need to keep doing what I'm doing until I can't do it anymore. And as long as I can still take corners on two wheels, I want to do that.
And one of the things that you're working on is something called the Beltway Team DC. And I believe you have actually relocated to the DC area. So you are attempting to do kind of the Steve Bassett thing and get members of Congress more interested in the UFO topic. Is that about right?
It is. It's amazing. It's a game changer. And the game changer that I first witnessed was the Citizens Hearing for Disclosure back in 2013. And
that was Steve's baby.
Oh my gosh. And he did, I couldn't believe what he did for the field. That was a huge game changer. And it set things up for our next big round of raising the bar, bringing in true professionalism. But what I witnessed was on a Monday, you had this group of former lawmakers up on a panel that were being polite, very polite and attentive. And by Wednesday, and mostly on Friday, they themselves are standing up, pointing fingers, saying, we need to open those Roswell files. We need to open that Rendlesham file. We need to get some answers on this and, other, little topics. And I witnessed when you present your best witnesses or your best cases, your most credible, and you're leaving out the silliness of, alien antennas and, a lot of the words like mothership, and they understood. They got it. So if these former lawmakers could understand with the proper avenue that that's how they're used to getting information, that's how they're used to disseminating and understanding information handed to them in a situation like a hearing, intelligence hearing. We see them all the time on television. Then why aren't we doing that? So I left that citizens hearing completely changed, knowing we need to up the game. And the first thing I realized we needed was more evidence, or more evidence-based reports and investigation report dispositions. And they needed to be scientific. And the only way to do that was with forensics and following the same rules as the Institute of Justice. So I went and got my certification on evidence collection. And then I realized now we need to go talk to them, because now we're finding the evidence. And I have to say, oh my gosh, guys, I feel like I'm talking too much. But one of the things that I realized also a couple years ago, there is so much evidence in UFOs, and we all know that. But why doesn't the rest of the world or Congress? No one cares. We're not messaging correctly. So that's when I realized the proper way for these people to understand what we're saying, or to even listen in the right temperature to understand, was by doing it their way, the way things are set up, their rules, which isn't offensive to us, by the way. So I think going forward and now presenting what our real evidence is and how it works, then people will care. And we saw that with the Nimitz video and the Tic Tac when ATIP came out. Now people were paying attention, and that's another game changer. It's so awesome.
I had a question for you. It was really interesting when we were talking earlier off the air about your DC group, the Beltway team DC group that you have, about a kitchen cabinet reference. I was curious if you could share with our listeners a little bit about that.
I love this group. There is so much talent in this area, as you can imagine, and people that are genuinely interested in the topic of UFOs that in previous careers never could be involved. So, we have a former commander, not my husband, by the way. This is a female. And we have an international attorney who is amazing and a very aggressive and well-thought attorney that specializes in war crimes. There's just this huge group out here that we pull together so that we can properly write statements, talking points, and dossiers, so that when we are brought in and when we are able to speak to, congressional leadership, or even junior staff, senior staff of some of the senators and Congress out there. So that's the group that we have. But I love the kitchen cabinet reference. And so we kind of call ourselves that, which is funny. It's a nickname. And that goes back to when Jefferson was president. Of course, he had a cabinet like we have today. And they were always meeting and getting together, telling him what was best for the country, what he needed to do. And he didn't always agree. So he would take that back into the kitchen, where he would meet with a couple of the elected officials that he trusted, but also a couple of his friends that always had good advice. And because they met in the kitchen, they nicknamed themselves the kitchen cabinet. I love that.
That's fantastic.
So we call ourselves the kitchen cabinet right now. It's really just, really good friends. And, for the good of UFOs, where do we find our best information that we can put forward? Because we're now having that ear. These doors in DC are opening, and they're opening quickly, and we have to be ready. And we have to be ready with the right tone and the right material, or we can shut them before other people get involved. So we're aware of that huge responsibility of, we don't screw it up for those behind us, because there will be those behind us. We're not the tell-all. So
right.
very excited about this.
Regarding international team of dreamers and expedition investigators and people working together and building good relationships and doing some real good UFO related work and more, I think that you were mentioning at one point that you worked with Timothy Alberino and Anselm of Bohic Rus. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
I love these guys. So this is where I get involved a lot in South America, Peru, Bolivia, the Amazon basin. And there's an incredible exploration team called Bohic Ruse. I post them on my Facebook all the time, and I hope that the listening audience Googles them to learn more about them. But they're just amazing, and they're explorers that he and his team, he meaning Anson, and this group actually are the founders of the candelabra in Paracas, and they also take care of it. And of course, they call it it's the sea spear or the trident of South America. It's just amazing discoveries. And this is a team that I work with currently that's also led by Timothy Alberino. So Timothy runs Inca Quest, and they have partnered with Bohic Ruse on this huge expedition down there now. I joined them last year, spent a lot of time, like almost a month, in the Amazon, which, by the way, everything wants to eat you. Plants, animals, insects, everything wants a bite. And we explored for something specific that I can't disclose, in an area that human feet have never, that the Amazon had never seen human feet. So we were the first people into this area, and it's astounding, the opportunity to work with these type of people that, not to digress, but you can imagine how much time you want to spend on these Phil Leach letters and Erica Luke's, just raping you for weeks. And I'm in the Amazon. They really don't mean that much to me.
Right.
Really nutty.
I wanted to also know, I just have a random question for you, and just to go backwards in time, what gave you the impetus and motivation to even be involved in the area of ufology? I wanted to know, when you were a kid, did you look up in the sky and gain knowledge or hope or have any dreams through that route? Or were you reading a lot? What caused you to become so curious about this topic we all love to cover?
It was, I was homesick from school, and my stepmother handed me Eric von Daniken's books, Chariots of the Gods, which I wanted nothing to do with because it was a church book. And after a couple hours of I can't stand the boredom anymore, I picked it up and started thumbing through it, ended up reading the whole book, loved it. I was so shocked, I think at my age, that I didn't even realize you could ask questions like that against things you're told. Like, this is it. This is what you're supposed to believe. This church says this, and that's it. And yet there was always that question. And I always felt like that person that either bit my tongue or got in trouble for asking things. So when I'm reading this and he's just asking questions and bringing out hypotheses that maybe support why he considers asking another one, I just thought that was freaking awesome. And it was also freeing in a lot of ways, because I'm kind of that girl that, in the desert with Moses, I wouldn't have waited 40 years. After about 3, I probably would have tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Hey, Mo, can I see that map for a minute?" I thought that was just brilliant questioning.
Yeah, I also wanted to know, do you feel like the future of ufology is headed in a manner towards full disclosure from governments around the world? Or, it's funny, I've asked this question of every single guest, and I've heard different perspectives like you would not believe. Everybody has a different point of view on that question. Some people believe disclosure has already happened regarding governments around the world. Other people feel like they've had their own form of disclosure in various ways. What is disclosure to you, and how do you feel about it in terms of the topic of ufology?
I love the idea of disclosure. I wonder in the political arena, because I think people tend to think of the United States and disclosure from our government and what our people would, how they would react, and and then I think of China and Russia, and what would they do with an American president standing up saying something like this? I think it would be like almost a joke. It could go in so many different directions that I believe this has to come from science, and most people know that. I believe all government knows that. And I also believe this comes from just the confirmation that, yeah, we definitely have some things going on, and this is happening in drips, but it's happening at a rapid pace. And I go back to the 60 Minutes interview with Robert Bigelow, who, as a very successful CEO, an incredibly successful CEO, billionaire, multi-billionaire, who stands up and says, they're right under our nose. You don't have to go to space to find life on other planets. It's right here under our own noses. And he had no apology whatsoever for saying that UFOs are real. And then government officials. And again, we have this ugly, ugly troll behavior that when new guys enter, or a new idea or a new way of doing things enters our field, there's no source checking, again, no fact checking. They don't call the source. They just start raping and shredding and calling out. And I think of ATIP, and definitely To the Stars Academy. Recently, we have somebody just talking about what liars they are, and yet they can't tell you one lie. And again, this is what we're dealing with: is these statements that people will just make against one another, and they can't prove it. They don't want to prove it. And how many things can they get wrong before we no longer listen to them?
Well, they're wrong. They're wrong from the get-go. I mean, Frank, go ahead. But I just wanted to make a little comment about that. Is I never knew that this level of crazy that Chase has been describing existed until they opened their mouths.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did just want to jump in because, excuse me, you brought up To the Stars Academy. Excuse me. And you did, for the MUFON Journal, the interview with Louis Elizondo. And tell us a little bit about that, how the interview got hooked up, and what were your impressions, and did he drop any bombshells during the interview?
I love that interview, and it's fair to say that Lou and I are close friends to this day. I'm still in contact with him. And I recently had the opportunity to also meet one of my, I was total geek, guys. I was total groupie, Steve Justice from Skunk Works. I know everybody would think it would be Tom DeLonge, which, he's awesome, but I'd never heard of his music. That would be my kids' music. I am the biggest geek with Steve Justice from Skunk Works. Oh my gosh, the head engineer of the SR-71. I felt like I was sitting with royalty. So, but to get back to Lou is open. He's trying really, really hard to tell us everything he can. He was stunned with the way he was treated and the immediate backlash that he experienced, to the point where I don't think they ever will talk to other ufologists and get them involved in their projects, and I don't blame them. And I applaud them for the absolute, if you can't play with integrity, we can't have you in our arena. We all are getting to that point. I certainly wouldn't invite an Erica Lukes or a Ben or a Tony or Norm Gagnon or a Phil Leach ever to be on a team with me or to work with me. I don't know who would. How could you trust them? They openly betray witnesses. They've openly betrayed colleagues and confidence and have said things that were untrue. How could you do it? But he was very shocked. I could tell you, not only have I vetted his service career, we have to forget. I think a lot of people forget this is an honorable veteran who cannot falsify credentials. There are laws against this. I mean, people are so stupid sometimes with their accusations that he was saying he was more than he was. This guy is the real deal. I will say when I leave him, I like him so much. He was so open. I got so much great information. And the next thing that I think of is, oh, that's right. He's an intelligence operator. I'm supposed to feel this way because he's really good at what he does.
Right, right.
Absolutely. And the truth is, it is his job. But that's not the job he's doing today. And this, what if they said that's not true? What disinformation are they putting out there?
Well, what they have done, and they have made this mistake going back to the first presentation that they did to DeLong's appearance on the Joe Rogan show, and also even last fall at the Italian conference that DeLong and Elizondo appeared at, is that they have presented graphics, video, or images that in fact weren't what they said they were. So they have made that mistake maybe a little bit too much,
And they own it. I can tell you that they own it. And they know that things get out of hand. And, Tom was not ready. He's a rock star. He's used to a couple tough interviews, but let's face it, he's a rock star. When you're interviewed by Rolling Stones, they treat you like royalty. They're giving him drinks, their accolades. They did not have any idea what they were stepping into. They really didn't. And unfortunately, had they done this 10 years ago or back in the days when ufology was led by Jacques Vallée and John Mack and, oh my gosh, Bud Hopkins, they probably wouldn't have felt this. This is it's a mess. It's a mess out here. And I think ufology needs to start standing up for itself. We need to seize our destiny. And the best way to do that is to no longer tolerate, these bad actors. And to the Stars Academy, that's not these guys. I don't know what happened to us when, like Jan and I talk all the time about how badly we have begged for military members to come out and tell us what they know, and intel and agency people and government officials. And then when we do, look what we put them through. And we haven't even vetted. How many people vetted that his DD-214?
You're talking about Elizondo's.
I am. I'm sorry. Yes, I am. And I'm so disgusted because how dare they call out this veteran when they haven't even looked at his DD-214. They haven't even talked to him. I can guarantee you that half the people that are on them right now have never spoken to any of them at To the Stars Academy. I'm a huge fan of what they're doing. Of course, anybody that's collecting evidence and having it analyzed properly, meeting the scientific scrutiny and admissibility, I'm all for. If Robert Bigelow offered me $1, I take it.
Right.
If he offered to fund my work, I would do it because there's nothing I could do. There's nothing immoral over any of this. And I absolutely would love to get some sort of movement forward in this field. And that's what To the Stars is going to do. When did we reject any military member? I just don't understand. I mean, is it me or have we not wanted this for decades?
Well, I do know that, excuse me again.
No problem.
I do know that they have been a huge catalyst in the field, that a lot of people working independently of them, have stepped up their game. Because of what they've done, a lot of military witnesses have come forward, especially in relation to the Nimitz case. A lot of that is a lot better fleshed out as a direct result of them. I mean, it takes somebody like Dave Beatty, who's kind of set up his own little infrastructure to get some of those guys to come forward. But he has done an amazing job with that. They've been a real catalyst in the field. I don't. This show wouldn't exist if it wasn't for what they did. So,
right.
Yeah.
Look at you. Absolutely. That is some of the smartest observation. Absolutely. And it's great. That's exactly how it's supposed to be. These guys did bring a game changer, and they upped the bar, and they're making contacts, and they have the names and the titles that can call the president of France. Why are we gonna be against them? And oh my gosh, because they're going to get the information to the right people. They throw everything out into the field, and the field's going to spend 5 years shredding it, pulling it apart. People that have never even tested material will weigh in on it. The whole thing gets so polluted. Or do they just hand this material? They change the game. It's not for us anymore. What if they just deliver it to the people that can actually do something about it?
And you're talking about Congress now.
Yes. And it's different than how we've done it before. It doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't make it against us. It just makes them out front right now. It truly does. And I believe how they plan to make this work is actually going to work, because every time we put things out in the public, our best cases, look what's happened with the Travis Walton case, which I think is absolutely legit and bulletproof. And look what they do to Travis. Look what they do to Rendlesham and John Burroughs. Look at some of the things that we hear about that. Maybe it's time we don't play in that arena anymore, and we start only speaking with the people that can actually move this forward. I'm not against that, especially considering what's been going on, that I'm just realizing to what extent of sleaze people are capable of.
Chase, you have a really wonderful thing that just happened to you. And rightfully so. I think you should mention it if you haven't already. I'm sorry, I had to step away for a moment. And that is an award-winning Best Documentary Film called The Seeding. Can you share with us, our listeners, a little bit about that?
Oh my gosh. And I have had this interest. And there's just, maybe I think it's because I'm a female and I'm a mom. But it's the missing fetus syndrome that we've heard about for so long. And I didn't really think there was a lot of attention. But it's just something that's been in my heart for such a long time. And Jack Roth in Florida approached me about writing a book with him about this topic. And before we could really dig in deep on that, we were already talking to witnesses and getting some of our research done and background. And Jack and John, known as such a fantastic and really money makers at Netflix with some of their documentaries they've already got in there, were called by the Orchard Group to California. And they said, hey, we want more from you guys. You're amazing. So Jack dropped the missing fetus syndrome, which is how I became associate producer. I would have given them this just because we have a brilliant duo in filmmaking, with the attention on this topic. But how classy that they're like, no, Chase, let's get you involved as associate producer and help us get the witnesses and, help us get some people in, like, Richard Dolan and, just there's some great stars in this. And we filmed, and I when I watched this, I couldn't believe it. It's really, really good. It is so good. These guys are brilliant, and I have to mention Lori Wagner because Lori is just, oh my gosh, her influence is in here. You could see it. It's just amazing, and to know that these guys like Netflix freaking loves it. We're already working on number 3 because they liked it so much, right? So we got a third one, but it's winning in these film festivals, and I'm so proud of the guys. I really am. Um, the awards that this film is receiving now is really about John, Jack, and Lori, and I'm just so proud. I'm just so proud that my name is even associated and that I could even be a very, very small part. And I'm not being modest. I was a very small part of this. And my heart is just pounding like I own that because it is a really good film. But it's great because it features a topic that I mean, listening to some of these witnesses and the story behind this, my heart's pounding, my stomach's in knots. I mean, I'm just wrapped into this story. It was brilliant. I loved it. So,
Well, yeah, tell us about the story. Tell us about what the film's about.
I
In a little
can't
bit more detail. Oh, you
because
can't. Okay.
yeah, right. It's not released yet,
Okay.
and but just know it really focuses on and there will be 2 of them on the missing fetus syndrome, and it's called Extraordinary: The Seeding. And look for it soon, very soon. It's already making its way through film festivals, which means release date should be imminent. As long as it keeps winning, though, it keeps stalling that release date, and that's why it's stalled because, well, if it won this one, let's put it in 2 more, right? So it's like
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah. Actually, I did have another question for you, and that is the investigation of the Malibu underwater base. We had an opportunity to peek at the report regarding that, and I wanted to know if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about that. It's a fascinating topic.
I love that case because, again, if people want to say we don't do scientific investigations, and I just roll my eyes like, again, do your homework. Who doesn't do scientific investigations? Because let me give you this report. Let me show you the method that we're using out here.
Yeah.
And
Real quick, just to jump in, this is a real interesting piece of geography out in the sort of a little bit east of Point Mugu. There have been lots of famous cases. The Nimitz case was not too far from there. The Kelly Johnson case, where he had a sighting in the early 50s out that way of a UFO over Point Mugu. For those who don't know, Kelly Johnson is basically the founder of Area 51. He was the first head of the Lockheed Skunk Works. So he's a guy who knows his aviation, 2-time winner of the Collier Trophy. Not too many people have done that. And he is a big deal in he's passed away now, but he was a big deal in the aviation field, regarded as one of the top people ever in the field. He had a sighting out that way, and like I said, the Nimitz case was not too far from there. This is a real interesting piece of geography out that way. A lot of sightings in that Catalina Channel area, and there was a photograph, I believe, of from Google Earth that led some folks to believe that there might be some sort of underwater structure in the area. Is that about right?
that's exactly right. And I think the reason people were so quick to jump on this Malibu underwater base allegedly was because of all the legit UFO activity or unknown aerial activity that goes on in that area. Nobody's debunking that at all. That is a hot zone, and we've known that for years. But this structure was too good to be true. Most people, if you just Google Malibu underwater structure, Google Maps, this prominent picture appears of something that looks like the entrance of an underground base or a tunnel base under the water. And I was really struck by that because, of course, if it's true, we have evidence. We have testable, we could go down and verify evidence. And that's what we did. So I boarded a research vessel. I boarded a research vessel named the Bold Horizon, which is owned by the Eclipse Group. And the Eclipse Group is deep water salvage that they save everything from, sunken submarines to down to aircraft. They're an amazing group, but they also found the Titanic for Steven Spielberg and did a lot of that work with the exact same equipment I had a chance to work with, which was the Mohawk 2, which is the ROV.
Just to jump in really quick, there was this Eclipse Group, were they looking for this structure as well? Or were they happen to be looking for something else in the area, and you just got the invite to go along since they were in the neighborhood anyway?
I got the invite to go along because this was a TV show they were putting together with A&E, and that's how they call the Eclipse Group, because A&E put a lot of bankroll behind this show because it was Rob Lowe. And
that explains all the pictures with Rob Lowe.
Yes,
okay.
That was on board there, and Rob Lowe grew up in Malibu, so he was always fascinated by the rumors of submarines going in and out, and could go under the continental U.S. under these tunnels, and thought that this might be the entrance to it. Well, as an investigator, I started really looking at this, and immediately I started having questions like, well, if we can see this structure at the depth that it is, why aren't we finding the lost, aircraft and boats in the Bahamas? And why are we not seeing a lot more? Why is it just this structure? And we're not really seeing anything much around it. It just seemed bizarre. It almost seemed hoax, which it was not a hoax, but the photo almost seemed like a hoax. So we get on the craft. It was 3 days out to sea, the first 12 hours. I think there was only 11 out of 40 that were not hanging over the rails. I was one of them. So was Rob Lowe, and they actually filmed him puking over the rails.
Nice.
Right? So then we got to work a lot and put the rover in. So we get right over the structure. We drop Mohawk down. It lands on top. We're scanning the structure with side scanning radar. We have HD photographs and video being taken at the same time. And what we're finding is that the top of the structure isn't anything like what we're seeing on the picture. It's not even flat. It's this big upward angle like a teepee or A-frame home. And that was shocking. And so, of course, then we lower the Mohawk in front of it while we're taking photographs and video, and then drop in front of the openings, and we go back and forth. We're not finding pillars or, 90-degree angles, things that we need to find that would give us any hope this was man-made or constructed and not a natural phenomena. Well, in the end, I ended up doing something that, from everyone I talked to that had been investigating the Malibu structure, had not done. I called Google because I couldn't get over, why are we not seeing all these other things in the ocean if we could see an underwater base, right?
Right.
And they explained that it's not a photograph, that the way Google Earth works is that they take satellite images, and it could be from a satellite, or it could be photographs from a balloon or a boat. And from GPS coordinates, they dot it in. Well, the computer will fill in the rest. So this is really a computer-generated image over some of the information it had. And so it's not a photograph. Well, I found that very interesting, and then also, ended up calling Port Hueneme, because what we hear all the time is Port Magoo, Point Magoo, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, everybody's got attention on this Navy base or this military base right here, but they're ignoring a few miles up the road is Hueneme, which is a Navy base, home of the Seabees, which is the construction battalion, and it's the home of the underwater construction. I'm like, how is nobody talking to them? Because if there is an underwater construction, they'd be the guys behind it and maintaining it. And
right.
So I called them too. And I got a hold of, I believe, Team 2, talked to the CDO, which is the command duty officer at the time. I think he was a first class. I'll have to go back to my notes. But, he was pretty open. He kind of laughed and said, "Yeah, I know about that picture." And he goes, we talk about that all the time. And he very clearly was like, "That's not what it is." And he said, "What do you think it is?" I said, "Well, I think it's a thrust fault, because that structure is right on top of the intersection of the Point Dume fault lines and the Santa Monica fault lines. And when these plates move, it's called a thrust fault. And that's exactly what it is. But it's also been, verified as that by many, many other sources. I even have like from radar, a little graph in there that shows, depth, like a fish finder. So you could even see where the point comes up on the structure and back down. And, but I love that, because this was something that we could debunk, or we could find the truth on immediately. Of course, we wanted an alien base. We got a thrust fault. But to me, it crosses off another anomaly off our list that we don't have to worry about anymore. We know what it is, done. But there is still a lot of great stuff to look at in that Malibu area. I love that area.
There are a lot of great cases out that way. And there has been talk about UFO bases underwater in that neck of the woods for a long time, just because there are so many sightings out that way.
Correct, yeah.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about your family. Your brother has, and I know you've covered this, but it's really interesting. Race Hobbs has spent copious amounts of time working very hard on, I think he might even be the co-owner of KGRA, you'll have to tell me, but on his podcast and station, making sure people have all this wonderful information about the area of ufology and other phenomena. How did he get involved in that? It's just so fascinating to me that you both in tandem are deeply involved in this area together.
It's bizarre. And just to be very honest and clear, he's not my real brother. We've adopted each other. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That, yeah.
But you can't tell our hearts that, right?
Right.
So
yes.
that's really, but he started in radio as a teenager. He's always had that voice, and that Race Hobb voice, oh boy, it swoons women around the world. And
he's really easy to listen to.
Yeah.
There are some pro broadcasters who aren't, but Race is a real easy guy to listen to for sure.
And he's also feisty. He doesn't mind getting a little riled up every once in a while, and it's sincere. And he is a sincere truth seeker. And he's also one that understands that, a few mistakes you made as a child or in your past that you've paid the price for, whatever, shouldn't be held against you for the rest of your life. And he has stood by the best. Linda Moulton Howe loves him. Don't mess with her, little Racy. Oh my gosh. And Richard Dolan from day one has been with KGRA. Right. And
he got Grant Cameron to do a show.
Yeah, exactly. And this is, I don't want to insult anybody, but when it comes to networks, absolutely top of the game. I think, KGRA is number one out there, and no one's going to touch them. So,
just to give a little nod to the job that Linda and John have done with their Phenomenon radio show.
Oh my gosh, right?
Over the last year and change in particular, they have gotten some really good guests. I mean, honestly, the shows they've done are right up there with some of the shows that Nori has done. Or not, I'm sorry, not Nori, but George Knapp has done over on Coast to Coast in terms of getting some really top-notch exclusive interviews. My hat's off to him. I'm a big fan. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, and when it came time for Linda to pick one, meaning Coast to Coast or KGRA, she picked KGRA.
That's amazing.
Volumes.
Yeah, it is.
And better, I think, to answer the question was, I think Race just always had an interest in UFOs and that radio, and just kind of found himself able to start building something like this. But it started when he and I talked. I was Star Team manager at the time, and he was just it was just crazy. Like how some of the best friends that you have, how you meet, and it's so random and quick.
But just to be clear here, just to clear this up, because this is something that I had heard, that you two were actually brother and sister, but in fact that's just more of an honorary sort of thing.
It is, but I love the fact that people don't know the difference anymore. That's
Okay.
awesome.
Okay.
Like honestly, it's funny.
I wanted to bring up something really important also, and that is a few things. I'm going to jump to a different subject. Lobbying for the UFO field is so critical. And you're ready to take that on, in a very passionate manner. Steve Bassett, as everybody knows, has been at it for years regarding his project, lobbying project on ET disclosure. He's also, from what I understand, I don't mind being incorrect on this, but at one point, the only man in Washington that was lobbying on behalf of UFO, the topic of ufology. Would it be true to say you are now the only woman lobbying on behalf of all of us? And also, if you wouldn't mind telling us at the same time, why is lobbying so important in Washington? I know it is, but why?
I believe I am the only woman. I believe Steve and I are still the only two.
Yes.
He doesn't call himself a lobbyist, though, or even a ufologist. He's an advocate.
Right.
I think he is registered. Isn't there a registration process you have to go through to become a lobbyist?
Oh my gosh,
he went through that. Yes.
Yeah, it's all done. I guess he is. I have the card carrying, ID wearing. Yeah, it's brutal. It's all done through the Office of Campaign Finance. So, and it's not an easy thing to get. And there's a lot of, background check, and there's a lot of hoops to jump through. But once you get it, it's worth it. And the reason lobbying is so important, and I do believe Steve and I are the only two doing that, even though I'm, pulling a team together. So it will be a team effort and a team going forward. It's important because who else is going to change this? We have all the evidence in the world that have been presented by Grant Camerons and Richard Dolans and, just like the biggest names out here, and no one cares. No one cares. Look at the radar we have. Look at, just the mountains of evidence. And yet we're still trying to convince people this is real. And it's because we're not the people that are going to affect any type of disclosure, confirmation. This has to go through certain channels to even be legitimized by other countries. It's just the way politics in an international setting work.
I'm glad you mentioned radar, because radar is key in my book. It's physical evidence of UFOs. And I don't think that point gets hammered home enough. I've been big on it. Every time I have a physicist have the opportunity to talk to one of those guys, I always ask them, do you consider radar physical evidence? The answer is yes.
And it is physical evidence, and it's also proof because of what radar tells us in every other situation. So why is it faulty on this one? So
I wanted to bring up something that Steve Bassett said when he was asked, what do you see as the ultimate goal? And the interviewer meant in the context of lobbying in Washington. He said this: the disclosure advocacy movement has a very clear goal: formal acknowledgement by world governments of an ET presence engaging the human race. At this time, the focus of the movement is on the United States, and at that time, it was President Obama. I'm going to ask you the same question this interviewer asked Steve Bassett. What is the ultimate goal for you regarding your being so passionate and engaging in getting involved in becoming a lobbyist, trying to get the government, so to speak, to do something? What are you trying to do exactly, and why?
It's to find the truth of what this phenomena is. We have no evidence that this is all good and they're going to come down and save us. We have a community that believes that, and yet the evidence doesn't support that. Neither does the evidence support it's all evil. and a national security threat. So we're still up in the air on exactly who they are and what they want. We're not debating that they're real. We are now debating who are they and what is the reason that they're interacting with humans. What is the role here? And of course, going through governments, it has to be a security risk. Anything's a security risk. A foreign bird, found on a beach. Don't touch it. We don't know if it's poisonous, right? So until we know what this is, we have to treat the phenomena with an observable skepticism and with a scientific method. And we just can't go in believing it's bad and shooting them up. And we can't believe there's this great and open our arms. And so if we have something we can study, and I believe 100% that we've been investigating and doing it right for a long time, but even MUFON has a little over 100,000 investigated eyewitness reports. What if we take this now and we treat it like a counterintelligence operation, which is also what a police department would do with a new gang in town? So that's what my Beltway group does, is we sit down and we systematically look at how are they communicating? Where are they living? How are they getting here? What is the proof? Do we have answers on this? What are their motives? Like, what do they seem most interested in? Where's the proof? Where's the data? So by going after the data and eyewitness reports in MUFON and New Force, which is Peter Davenport's site, speaking to countries that keep data like Chile and France, who their governments openly investigate UFOs, and dealing with other countries that do the same, ufologists in Russia. And we start gathering as much information or intelligence that we can, and we just start processing this with a scientific and skeptic puzzle. It's just a big puzzle. And we put together our best hypothesis from that. And that's what we'll be putting forward, because that's what they'll be doing in Congress. That's what they'll be doing around the table is, well, what does this mean? So we have this Tic Tac video, and what does that mean to us? And considering the issues going on that they need to deal with about our country, and let alone the swamp garbage like FISA warrants and, collusion and all that stuff going on, just the day-to-day operations of the government is difficult enough. Now let's bring them something they know nothing about, because I guarantee you they don't. Congress does not have information on UFOs. Senate doesn't. Intelligence Committee does not. Threat Assessment does not. And this is where Lou was frustrated in ATIP, not having the access to the people that most needed the information. So we take it on a private level.
Yeah, a few things that...
let me jump in here with a real question. Well, they're all real questions, but a question real quick about the frequency. You talked about the motivations. That might be a little tough to get to, but if we had more data, especially from the military, we might be able to come up with a reasonable speculation as to how often these UFO cases are in fact ET. That's something I've never really heard anyone come out with, and just want to get your thoughts really quick. How frequent do you think this is happening?
What Lou tells us is more than we believe and more than we're told. And I believe that. There's, we hear all the time of, military people coming out saying, well, we tracked it, but, I was just told to forget about it. And so in that sense, I think a lot. I think there's a lot more that's going on.
Weekly, monthly, daily?
I can't speculate, but that's one of the questions we'd like to know. And the only way we're going to get that information is by cooperating and working with our lawmakers. Again, when did they become the bad guys that we can't trust a single one of them because they used to work for the CIA, or they used to work for, or they used to be a senator? I love Senator Reid, and when you listen to what he comes out and says, that Russia and China are aggressively going after this technology as well. What did he just say? Whoa, oh my gosh, guys, right? He just said Russia and China are going after UFO technology. Why would this man, at his age and dealing with the health issues he's dealing with, even feel like he should say something like that if it wasn't true and he wasn't concerned? We need to start listening to these people that actually have the secrets, or some of them.
And just to follow up on that, Reid, of course, is out. He's no longer senator from Nevada. He's making these statements basically as a private citizen again. And there does seem to be that really weird thing that has gone on for a long time, really even going back to the 50s, where when they're in, they don't say anything. But sometimes they will start talking a little bit more once they're out. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, it's called, the secrecy. So even in the citizens' hearing, there were, I believe it was Rendlesham, when they were putting up some of the evidence that they had from, just the physical aspects. One of the senators was afraid, even as a former, that he did not have the security clearance to read what was in that file. And that's how it works. So once you're in one of these committees, you're held to secrets. And depending on your level, or how long your secrecy oaths expire, or how long you're held to that, or when things are declassified, or it's safe to talk, these guys can't. It's the same thing with Bigelow. Bigelow wasn't hiding information as much as he's not allowed. He's a contractor, and he's a defense contractor. So when he gets these defense monies, and part of that discovers UFO technology, well, he's still under that secrecy. It's a top secret program. He can't let the whole world see this. And that's what we're learning at this point. It isn't that he wanted to keep it secret, he had to. So what is the best way to make these things public? You privatize the information so that it's no longer classified. Then you can give it to your scientist, and they can move forward with this technology. That may be our biggest game changer yet. So think about what I just said there, and that actually makes sense. And once again, these guys aren't concerned with what UFO people like Chase Kloetzke think. Bigelow could care less what I think.
Yeah, he's made that clear.
Yeah, and I don't blame him. He's got great minds that are ready to help him and push this forward. And I would be excited if Joe Blow the plumber found the smoking gun. If it helped the cause. I just don't think that Joe the plumber, or Chase Kloetzke, or Richard Dolan, or any of these guys, or any of us holding the smoking gun would ever be able to scientifically present that evidence. Just think of just the UFO field alone.
Right.
It's polluting everything we've done right. Is this Jerry Springer attitude and antics is polluting everything we've done right so far.
I was just going to make a kind of a side comment, and that is, even, I'm not going to pronounce the name of the country very well, by the way, you'll have to correct me, but even Uruguay, they have an Air Force that has conducted UFO investigations since '89.
Yes.
And reportedly analyzed 2,100 cases, of which they regard approximately 2% as lacking explanation. Now, just wanted to say that there's all kinds of governments around the world that are actively pursuing, investigating this topic, and for good reason. They have aircrafts too. They have satellites also They want to learn more about these anomalous objects in the sky. If it's not for defense reasons, it's just plain curiosity. It has to do with science and technology. Wanted to know, do you feel like what would happen? I have kind of a strange question for you. What do you think would happen if ETs landed on the planet right now? And I'd like to make a comment about that. By the way, how I feel about that? I know people who would still deny them right there within feet of them that they were actually there. Now, I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that's how they would react. How do you think our planet would react if that occurred?
I think you're right. I think there'll be people, this is a false flag operation. Yeah. I think that we would all be gathered around with probably our best friends. I'd call my kitchen cabinet, or it's not my kitchen cabinet, we're together. But anyway, I'd call my kitchen cabinet and we'd be around that TV, and I'd call my husband saying, oh my gosh, can you believe this? And we'd be glued. And it would be on television 24/7 for weeks, and people would just be more interested. And I think it would be an observable until, depending on the next move from the occupants of that craft that landed. But I don't think people are going to freak out and commit suicide and lose their religion just because of the countries that are already doing that, like you mentioned, Uruguay and Chile and France. There's no mass freakouts. Nobody's going crazy, knowing their government is investigating UFO activity. And this is something we also remind people and bring forward. But I really think it would be like any other world event. I think everybody would pause, almost hold your breath, and we'd be gathered around that TV.
Well, we've always sort of known that, really. Anybody who takes UFOs seriously has always known that, even though the Air Force said they don't investigate UFO cases anymore after Blue Book closed up, but it's literally their jobs to get up in the air or to track things on radar or whatever the case may be. If something they don't recognize is if they can see it. So we always kind of knew that they were looking into this subject. It's not like it should. I guess the details maybe have been a bit of a surprise and a catalyst and a game changer, like you said, but it really shouldn't have been. I mean, even Paul Dean found not last year, but I believe the year before, that they've been investigating this stuff all the time. They use the UFO acronym to this day within the military, and it shouldn't have been too much of a surprise, but I guess to the general public it has been.
And I think that's mostly because of the compartmentalization. So, and the media has played a huge part in making sure that the public finds this to be a ridiculous topic. And hasn't been a lot of scrutiny. We've lost our media. We've almost lost our UFO media. We have so much stuff out there. I feel sorry for any new person that's trying to find information, because there's so much crap they have to wade through that it's a wonder anybody stays with us after a while. Which is why a place like MUFON is the perfect place to land. But I totally forgot your question, Frank. I was rambling.
Just that we always knew that the military has been investigating these cases all along, responding to something that comes up in real time, that type of thing.
Yeah, and this is something where, like I said earlier, we've been begging for confirmation that this is what's been going on. We've known. We absolutely knew they were doing that. And now that we have it, what are we doing to these people? Are we vetting what they're saying? They're not telling us to buy it hook, line, and sinker. But, when this information gets put out by these same people, my God, I'm just shocked at the way we're behaving out here and not embracing until we have a reason. When you catch people obviously putting out false information, when you catch people that aren't telling the truth, that's when you cut them. But you don't assume that because, somebody used to be an intelligence agent, that they're going to put out disinformation.
There's a difference here, and I think this is important to bring up. Enough to interrupt you. Sorry about that, but there's a difference between making an honest mistake and putting out false information.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I made I've certainly made my share of mistakes in all this, and it does happen. But there's a difference again between knowingly misrepresenting facts or making up facts or that sort of thing, and making an honest mistake. A huge difference in my book.
Absolutely, Frank. And what did you do when you realized that?
Fixed it.
Exactly. I just sent an email out to a couple of friends here in Virginia and said I have to eat some crow. Absolutely. If I said something, like, I will own it. I will fix it. And that's my issue is, but that's integrity. And we also know that integrity is something that you do when people are not looking. And, we kind of started the show talking about like the dirty side that seems to be culminating, and, grown men picking on, a colleague, a female colleague, or the gang mentality, how they all collude and let's do this and I'll bring you on the show and we'll get her. To what end? To what end? And then you're going to do this to our professionals that we've been wanting to come out for decades, our military people, our, agency people. My God, if there's no room for these people in ufology to come talk to us and tell us what they know, or to give us what they can, and we not understand secrecy or, what a clearance means, they don't need to be they don't need to be the people talking to them then, if they don't understand how it works. It blows my mind, really.
Well, I have to admit, sometimes I don't understand how it works either, but still, it's part of the game. You just got to kind of deal with it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay if I make a statement about that, or
go for it.
Well, what I have to say is going to last a little while. So.
Oh. Awesome.
Okay. Well, early in our show, we were talking about trolls, haters, that kind of thing. One thing I like to point out is the very thing these chronic whiners complain about, they're guilty of at the same time. While these abusers are claiming abuse, they're busy abusing. The first thing that happened to Chase when news of her having left MUFON got out was someone who never even took the time, like any journalist or reporter of news should, and that is take the effort to contact Chase to find out why she left the organization in the manner she did. She didn't completely leave it either. In fact, the first thing they did was write up a few sentences, added a byline, and for some reason it was called not only an article, but breaking news. This news was not based on facts. It was a poorly written series of a few sentences, and not grammatically correct either. News is written so a 12-year-old can understand it, but in this case, it was written like a 5-year-old wrote it. Well, how about the source of what the actual article or these sentences, so poorly written, are supposed to be based on? That wasn't there either. It had not only misleading information, but unfounded allegations, all formulated in the classic manner a bully would try to accomplish to try to drag someone's name through the mud. Sources are important. That few sentences, those few sentences didn't have them. Although these whiners' mentalities are at a 2-year-old, it's all about me level, they can get very dangerous. One case reminds me of how something got so out of hand, it was like the movie Lord of the Flies. Case in point, Alex Jones turned from claiming he was using his First Amendment rights and did an about-face claiming psychosis was the reason why he bullied and abused the victims regarding a famous and horrific massacre of children. One of these days, one of these bullies who think it's so entertaining and satisfying to abuse people at their expense is going to find themselves with a lawsuit or serious criminal charges against them. But what do these cowards do every time? They blame it on everyone and everything else but themselves. It's a known pattern. Abusers are predictable. That's because they're serial abusers. Funny thing, as soon as you criticize one of these cowards, the first thing they do is start a cycle of whining that has a life of its own that lasts years. And they always hide behind a facade of not claiming to be an abuser while abusing people. There are many reasons why weak people like this do this sort of thing. One is they are passing on abuse they had to deal with, and or they have a very low self-confidence. And yet another factor they're dealing with are serious psychological issues. None of this is an excuse to create social media hate campaigns against anyone ever. And while they're claiming they aren't, they are. They always claim it has to do with some great point they have against a person or an organization. Show me an organization that has been around for decades and is perfect. Not many. Even Lockheed, probably a multi-billion-dollar corporation, now dealing with a lawsuit of a whistleblower. Does that mean they're bad? They must be pretty good at something. They get hired on a regular for contracts in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Does one issue they have make all their employees bad? No. It means there was an issue and it's being addressed now through a series of checks and balances. That's it. Now, psychologists, shamans, leaders, healers, atheists, or folks with no faith-based belief system around the world in just about every culture will tell you, use the experiences you've had to make you a better person. Make the world a better place. Let go of the past and move forward. It also helps with health. Being negative at the level these bullies are at can cause heart attacks, lower the immune system, cause health issues of all kinds. More important than the bully's health, my health, your health, the listener's health, who have had to listen to these whiners' broken record about all the injustices that have occurred to them over their entire lifetime, even their protests about what I'm saying here, yet more whining. You know why? They live and feed off of this negativity. They feel they're more special than all of us, that their problems are your problems. Don't fall for that. Everyone has problems. If they don't, it's because they aren't breathing. They're dead. Why not be grateful? Millions of people around the world face serious crisis, whether it be political, health, environmental, or more. There are unspeakable brutalities being committed against children. Millions of people dealing with cancer or other diseases, people born with serious disabilities. Point here, be grateful. Your petty issues are not ours. Let me tell you what a real problem is. I woke up one day and found out I had cancer. It was the worst type a woman can get. It was triple negative cancer. 5 years later, almost to the very day, I had breast cancer yet again. What did I do? I had to pretend I liked it. Why? Because if you throw yourself down the self-pity trap and live out the negativity of the challenge you're facing, you can die. Your immune system can drop. You can go to a worse stage of cancer almost overnight. I chose the positive vibe to face my cancer twice in a row, and I faced it alone the second time. I did this so I could focus on healing, and I did, and I moved on. Going forward is key. It's a key step these whiners are missing in the steps towards healing. Guess what I'm doing tomorrow? I'm going in for my 7th reconstruction surgery related to my mastectomy. Back to these abusers. They are very purposefully not doing these key steps. Why? Because they're hooked on feeling sorry for themselves. Again, they think they are more special than we are. While they're protesting they aren't, they are acting and sending out signals that they are. What are our listeners looking for? Some knowledge and inspiration about the topic we all love to cover here, not inquiry-related gossip mongering and hate towards others. Lastly, how many of us have had to deal with broken promises and injustices? With 7.7 billion people on the planet, I would say all of them. From the point they were born, something probably occurred that was not perfect. As this person grows up, they will face broken promises, multiple kinds of injustice. I've had to deal with sexual harassment since the age of 14 or 15 when I entered the workforce. I dealt with harassments of all types for decades. It wasn't just one time. It was too many times to count. Both women and men have abused one another for thousands of years. I've been passed up for promotions because I'm female. Both men and women have sexualized situations in the workplace using their higher rank to try to take advantage of a situation. But much like my situation with cancer twice, I persevered. And billions of people around the planet in the same situations do too. They've persevered. You don't hear me going on ad nauseum about these challenges on a regular. Why? Because although they're valid issues, everyone has valid issues. What would happen if we spent all of our time crying and psychoanalyzing all of our issues? We would never look up at the sky anymore. We wouldn't have advancements in science, medicine, technology, and more. No one would get anything done. And that's exactly what's happening here. Do any of these bullies ever get it? No, they don't get it on purpose. Why? Because they get to take advantage of the same privileges you and I have worked hard to create, while publicly dragging people down they don't like down at the same time. Character assassination is easy. How about getting thicker skin and doing some real research and hard work like we're doing here on a regular basis? That's not going to happen. They don't have the skill sets to deal with trauma or challenges in life, so they attack people like Chase, me, or Frank, or you, the listeners. Remember the last time you had to tolerate a crybaby? It gets old, doesn't it? If that's what they want to be remembered, as they will soon be forgotten. History does not remember people like that. We remember those making the world a better place. While these crybabies are busy convincing everyone their issues are epically important, Frank and I are going to carry on the torch of others who have passed it to myself and other young guns to continue with the serious study of ufology. Chase is going to continue with her important UFO research and lobbying to make the world a better place. That's my rant.
Chant's rants. Thanks, Chant.
Chant, I have knots in my stomach. I'm almost in tears. I feel so horrible about, and I know that's not what you want is sympathy. And I know this because you shared your story. Is that the first time you've told people about having cancer, breast cancer?
Yes, publicly on air. Yes, I have.
Well, that was the share as well. I found out I have lung cancer, and I have been fighting that for about a year. I've gone through the steps, and honestly, right now, I took a procedure that gives me 50% chance I have 5 more years. And I'm going to tell you, Chant, they're not going to care that we struggle like this. I, too, have not one time balled up and cried that I had cancer. Not one time. My husband tears my heart out, but I do not feel sorry for myself, and I haven't made it an issue in ufology either. I went to the Amazon with cancer, never told the guys, stayed step by step, fought like hell, keeping secrets when I hurt, but I'm going to keep doing it. And I'm sharing this also publicly for the first time ever. My close friends know, but I have kept this. But I'll tell you why they won't care. Because the people that are attacking me right now know I have cancer.
I'm very sorry to hear that.
They do it anyway. Yes, they know I'm fighting. And, it's, yeah, I had no intentions of going public with that. But maybe it's important, Chant. And I wasn't, you being such an amazing person and sharing that story, I wasn't going to let you do that alone, knowing what I had as well. So we're bonded in sisterhood. And, I consider myself a lung cancer survivor, and I'm actually on that program right now. So let's see if that 50% is mine. But in the meantime, I have a lot of karma I'm making up, or I don't want to be around those people. Like you said, even listening to them, it gives you a sickness. It brings you down. And until they start making things right or just dropping it, oh my gosh. But they can't hurt us, Chant. They can't. They can say negative things and it makes them feel good. It's not taking us out of anything. It's not even hurting my feelings because I'm in Peru. I'm not listening. And and your great spirit, and you're so sweet. And you and Frank, the only ones that stood up and said, let's do this. The only ones. I'm so proud of you. I am so proud of you, honestly. And I want to thank you and Frank, honestly. And let's fight. Let's move forward.
Well, thanks for coming on. It's been a great interview. It really has been.
To all my friends out there, I don't want to talk about it. It's like I forget that I have cancer because it's such a little problem that I treat it as something I deal with. But, I can't wait to go to Peru. Do you feel that same way, Chant?
I do. And I would like to give some advice to your friends who love you very much, friends and family. And just so they understand where I'm coming from, they may have missed what I said. I did the second cancer alone for a reason. The first time I did it, my family, which is huge, contacted me on a regular, which was wonderful. But they were always talking about the downside of cancer, which it is. It is only a downside, but there is another angle to it, and that is it can make you a stronger person.
Yes.
And so on the days that you're not strong, they're there for you. What the advice I have for your friends and family, having been a cancer survivor twice, is please do not talk to Chase about the downside of cancer. Make her laugh. Make her feel good. And also, above all, let her know how much you love her. We all love her. Look, I never even had the privilege of actually talking to Chase until recently, but I followed her and all the hard work that she's done. I don't know if you realize this, Chase, but there's literally thousands of people out there who follow what you do. And the thing I wanted to make a point of, I just spoke to a friend, Keith, about this recently. And this ties into what I'm talking about here. I said, there's so many jerks out there doing exactly what, we're all talking about here. And he said, you know what, though? The beauty of what we're involved in is for every jerk, there's 500 more people who care about what you do. It just so happens that these few jerks are loud. They're louder than these quiet people who want to learn more. Well, all these quiet people that want to learn more, we all support you. We're all here for you, Chase.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been a good talk, you guys. This has been a huge interview.
Yes, it's been a fantastic and epic interview. Thank you.
Yeah, we're glad you came on, Chase. I really appreciate it. We've never spoken directly before, but I've been a fan, like I said, since I first became aware of you back in your KGRA days, and just really exciting. And I can tell you, I do have my problems in life, of course, like everybody else. They shrink to insignificance compared to what you guys have had to deal with. But one thing about this field, and it gets me excited. It takes my mind off the first world problems that I get to deal with. But it's very good for that. And it seems like it's helped you guys through much more significant health issues. And it's a good thing. Overall, the UFO field is not perfect, but by and large, it's very good. It's very exciting. It's I think it can play a really big role in self-actualization, which I'm very much a fan of, and I like it, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing everything that you did with us, answering all our questions, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and like you guys, I'm not going anywhere. I think the same thing. I love this field. I've been doing it since 1994. Joined MUFON in 96. I'm not leaving MUFON either. I'm a huge advocate for this amazing organization that's been standing for 50 years and going to be around for another 50 years. MUFON is the world's historians and archivists for eyewitness investigated cases. And that's where our data is going to be. Want to make it very clear, I love Jan Harzan. I think he's a wonderful person, and we continue to be great friends and colleagues, and we will be working together on big cases in the future. And Chant and Frank, you guys are so amazing. We now call each other friends. very good friends, and call me for anything. I can't wait to talk to you both again.
We look forward to having you again on the show, Chase. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, guys.
Sure thing. And any final thoughts there, Chant?
I just would like to say it's been a real privilege and an honor to have had the opportunity to interview you, Chase.
Thank you. That honor has been mine. Trust me. Trust me, guys. It's totally mine. And I can't thank you enough again. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome.
All right, so we're going to wrap things up, and we've got more shows in the pipeline. Very exciting guests coming on. We'll keep it going. The goal here, of course, is, as always, to gain and share knowledge. In our case, we can do it pretty well instantaneously because we live stream, of course. Gain and share knowledge about UFOs. That's what we're here for, and that's what we're going to stick to. Chant, thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye now. And we're done.
Tags alone. Oh my gosh, you guys are awesome. Thank you.